Part 84. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 831. Chapter 831. Our main family is the Lee family of Sujintan. The news he received today was too sudden, and the opportunity was rare. He wanted to make a profit as soon as he got excited, but he failed. This time, the three men sent out are the main force of the secret guards. They know too many secrets of the Wu family. The steward of the family shop also helped spread the news. It would be fine if they were all lost, but if only one of them was caught alive, it would be completely over. "Where's Madam? Hurry up and ask Madam to come over," Mr. Wu shouted over and over again. Before I could follow him out, Mrs. Wu had already come looking for me. She said as soon as she entered the door, "Master, why did I hear that you didn't have lunch? This is not allowed, your health is important. As long as our daughter is still in the palace as queen, our family has nothing to fear. Even if Dali Temple and the Ministry of Punishment find out anything, at most they will be fined a little money." Unfortunately, she was only halfway through speaking when Mr. Wu grabbed her arm firmly and lowered his voice and asked, "Who else around you knows about that matter? What's up?" Mrs. Wu was confused by the question, and Mr. Wu was so angry that he wanted to split her head and mess with it. He gritted his teeth and said, "Who knows about killing Princess Kangal and taking the heart blood for the queen to drink, besides you?" Mrs. Wu finally reacted, "Only Grandma Sun knows. When I met the old fairy that day, she was the only one by my side." Mr. Wu immediately ordered, "Hurry up and deal with her secretly. You must not let her say another word." Mrs. Wu was startled. She always relied on Grandma Sun, but now she heard that Grandma Sun was going to be killed, so she was a little hesitant. "Master, Grandma Sun is very loyal and will never betray me." "Idiot," Mr. Wu shouted with smoke coming from his anxious voice, "this matter will be exposed soon. Only by killing Grandma Sun can we save you. Once I am captured, you can still go to see the Empress and plead for me, otherwise we will have to wait for death." Mrs. Wu finally knew the seriousness of the matter and quickly called the little girl waiting outside the door to find Grandma Sun. As a result, the little girl turned to Ai and said, "Madam, just now Grandma Sun said that something happened to her nephew. She wanted to go out of the house to have a look, and asked us to take care of her." "What?" Mrs. Wu's face changed in shock. Mr. Wu immediately called for his attendants, ordered a few people's hands, and took the little girl straight to the back door of the home mansion. Outside the back door is a small alley. There are more than a dozen small courtyards in the alley. All the family members of the Marquis Mansion stewards and others live here. Grandma Sun's nephew also lives here. Shortly after he came to the Marquis Mansion as an errand, this boy became obsessed with gambling. At night, he gathered a group of people to throw dice in a small garden room, but was discovered and kicked out of the house. The people in the courtyard where he stayed did not dare to offend her too much for the sake of Grandma Sun, but they also did not interact with him too much. When the chief came with his men, the people in the yard were startled when they saw how aggressive they were. The woman ran into the house in panic, and the children even ran away crying and hiding. Chang Sui was so noisy that he had a headache. He yelled loudly, then called a man to come forward and asked, "Where are Sun Zuzu and Aunt Sun? Who knows where they are? Please call them out quickly." Everyone in the courtyard looked at each other, not knowing. Chang Sui was annoyed and asked, "It's the master who wants to question Nanny Sun and Sun Zuzu. You should call them out quickly, otherwise the business will be delayed and the master will blame you." "No one can afford it," a man bravely said. "Sun Zuzu disappears and disappears every day, and no one can catch his shadow. Besides, it seems that he didn't come back last night. As for Grandma Sun, we didn't even see her." One child was so bold that he suddenly stuck his head out from behind his mother and shouted, "I know, Grandma Sun ran out. I accidentally bumped into her, and she called me a bastard. Where did she run to? Chang Sui quickly asked. The child pointed outside the alley, but he couldn't tell where exactly. Chang Sui was helpless, so he quickly led people to chase him outside. What they didn't know was that at this moment, Grandma Sun and her nephew had been tied up, thrown into a carriage, and jolted out of the city. Sun Zuza was beaten until his nose was bruised and his face was swollen, but Grandma Sun was unscathed. But if someone could see through it, they would definitely be able to see her purple intestines. Just now, she heard someone send a message saying that her nephew had his leg broken by the gangsters in the casino because he owed money, and he was waiting for her to save his life. She hurried out of the house, but the casino didn't ask for any money at all and knocked her and her nephew unconscious. When they woke up again, they were in this carriage. A young steward was sitting at the back of the car, guarding the door. She couldn't get out even if she wanted to. She struggled and whimpered crazily, but unfortunately her mouth was stuffed with rags and she couldn't say a word. The young steward was none other than Zheng He. Perhaps seeing Grandma Sun's eyes almost popping out of her head, he tried to persuade her with a few words of kindness. "Old lady, please stop struggling. If you have the strength, you should think about what you have done that is immoral. When the interrogation comes later, you can explain it earlier and save yourself the pain." Unfortunately, Sun Yan did not listen to persuasion. The struggle became more and more powerful, and the broken cloth in her mouth was spit out by her. She retched twice and immediately shouted, "I am from Jiangning Hao Mansion, please let me go. I will give you as much money as you want." It's a pity that Zheng He put the rag back casually, and even stuffed it again and again. Mama Sun's throat was almost blocked and she suffocated to death. After finally taking a breath, she heard Zheng He say, "The one we are arresting is you, Aunt Sun, Mrs. Wu's personal nanny. Also, let me tell you one more thing, we are not from a casino, our owner's surname is Li, the Sujintan Li family." Li family. Grandma Sun took a breath and understood everything in her heart. In the yard of Li's family in Zincan, Mrs. Li was playing with Xing Xing and Yui Yui. The two children were dressed like cotton and ran around chubby. They were very cute. Mammy Chang is always watching over me, helping me from time to time. Wanner and Wenjuan were sitting in the house, sewing some small things for their children. Since the family bought a maid, they have people around to help them, so they don't do eye-catching tasks such as clothing and shoes. Wenjuan stretched her head and looked into the yard from time to time, for fear of tiring the old lady. Wanner gently patted her sleeping son and comforted her in a low voice, "Wenjuan, don't worry. I saw my grandma thinking about my sister who went to the city, and she didn't eat much for lunch, so I asked her to help look after the children and take care of her." Wenjuan blushed and replied, "I know that too, but grandma is taking care of the children and we are sitting in the house, and I always feel uneasy." Wanner looked at the son and said, "Don't worry, my sister and the others should be back soon." Before these words could be heard, a servant came running back from outside, "Old madam, the princess and the others are back." Fourth update. Yesterday's debt was not paid off, and I kept my word, but the update was late, which kept my friends waiting for a long time. It must be earlier in the future. Hugs, refill. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 832. Chapter 832. Give us a bowl of rice. Old Mrs. Li immediately left the two little babies behind and hurried out to greet them. Mammy Chang quickly called Xiaodong and Wan Kai who were under the eaves, and took the child into the house. Then she rushed forward in a few steps and helped old Mrs. Li's arm. Jiyan watched her grandma standing at the door from a distance. Before the carriage stopped, she jumped out first, rushed forward and hugged her grandma's arm. "Grandma, I'm back. You stinky girl, you are really disobedient if you let go," you will never come back." Mrs. Lee looked at her granddaughter carefully and felt relieved when she saw that she was unharmed. She was about to speak again when she saw her eldest son sitting in another carriage and turning to the back of the village. There were 10 guards following the carriage. "So," she asked in surprise, "did I send your uncle to divine Dr. Zhang? What happened to you when you entered the city?" Jiyan was afraid of being scolded, so he blinked his big eyes and quickly changed the subject. "Grandma, this is a small matter, we'll talk about it later. We have been busy for a long time and are in a hurry to come back. No one has eaten. We are almost crazy with hunger. Grandma is kind and gives us a bowl of rice first." After saying that, she held her hands together in a strange way, like a beggar, making the old lady dumbfounded. Old Mrs. Lee slapped her granddaughter's hand and said angrily, "You will fight with me, and when you are full, I will see where you can hide." She said this, but she felt sorry for her granddaughter and grandsons. She quickly called the boy to go to the kitchen to give instructions and prepare the food quickly. "The weather has been dry and cold these days, and my family has nothing to do, so they started making dumplings. Pork and pickled cabbage stuffing, cabbage and pork stuffing, beef and radish stuffing, mutton and green onion stuffing. In short, there are a lot of stuffs that the family likes to eat. When it gets dark, put up a wooden board in the corner of the yard and cover it with a large piece of clean oil paper. After making the dumplings, run them through cold water, sprinkle them with water, and freeze them into ice shells within 2/4 of an hour, and then put them into a clean frame. In this way, no matter how many months it is left, as long as the ice shell does not melt, the dumplings will not shrivel or deteriorate. At times like today, when meals suddenly need to be prepared and dozens of families are waiting to eat, these frozen dumplings come in handy. There are 3 large pots and 1 small pot in the stove, and they are burning at the same time. 2 large pots were filled with water to cook dumplings, leaving 2 large pots for stews and small stir-fries. In less than half an hour, the hot meal was ready. 20 guards of the Lu family carried 2 pots of dumplings and a bucket of dumpling soup back to the East Guard room to eat. Jiaran and the others were left, and Mrs. Lee felt sorry for them having to freeze outside all day, so she took the initiative to place the dinner table in the East room, where it was warmer. Jiyan was afraid of being scolded, so she smiled and went to the table to eat with her brothers. Originally, she also invited Yeshan, Zheng Sanjiang, and Zheng Lu. It's a pity that Yeshan and Zheng Sanjiang abide by the rules and refuse to serve. Zheng Lu was thinking about Zheng Yi and Zheng San and refused to stay. Finally, they all went to the kitchen to eat. Muju, on the other hand, was not polite. Jiaran invited him and he sat down at the bottom of the table. What Mrs. Lee likes most is when the children get together and eat big meals. She was holding the basin with a smile. When she saw which child's plate was empty, she quickly added a spoonful of dumplings. Jiyan occasionally looked up and almost choked himself. Grandma looks so much like a woman feeding pigs, and they are the little pigs that are grunting and fighting for food. Old Mrs. Lee didn't know it yet, but her granddaughter had seen through her, and she was still feeding the pigs conscientiously. When she got to Muju's side, she couldn't help but add 2 more spoons and said angrily, "This child was sent out by the Marquis on some errand. Why is the child so hungry and thin? I didn't come back, I didn't have any errands to give, so I hurriedly ate a few more meals at home to make myself fat." Muju stared at the plate full of dumplings. Listening to Mrs. Lee's distressed complaints, she hesitated for a moment with her chopsticks, then started eating again. The last time he ate dumplings was on his birthday. At that time, his mother's illness was not that serious, so he cooked the noodles and mixed the fillings himself, and he ate 2 full plates. Father was afraid that he would be overstretched, so he took him for a walk in the yard. Mother sat under the eaves, laughing all the time. A few years later, he ate dumplings again. They were not made by his mother, but because of the old man's nagging, he tasted the same. Possibly because the masters were afraid that the table full of meat-filled dumplings would be a bit boring, the kitchen sent out a few more plates of freshly made dumplings filled with leek and egg. On a winter day like this, green leafy vegetables are hard to come by, let alone fresh leeks. After Cat Brother ate one, he cheered, "The leek and egg dumplings are still the most delicious." When everyone heard what he said, they all moved their chopsticks to the plate. Jian ate one, turned around and saw that Muju didn't move his chopsticks, so he picked up two for him and advised, "Brother Mu, eat quickly. If you wait a little longer, my seventh brother will rob them all." Brother Cat immediately protested, "My sister is partial, and my eldest brother and the others have also eaten it. Why are you only talking about me?" Jian quickly grabbed two for himself and then said, "Brother, the four of them together can't eat as much as you. What's wrong with me eating too much? No matter how much I eat, I won't gain weight." Brother Cat shook his head proudly and ate faster and faster. The good news instantly hit my heart, and the dumplings in my mouth no longer tasted good, and I was immediately defeated. Although she has a slim figure, has grown taller, and has become thinner, she still has to consciously control her diet. Because if she eats too much and too greasy food, she will still gain weight. For the sake of beautiful clothes and to escape from the ranks of chubby girls, she gave up countless delicious foods. "Grandma, look at my seventh brother, he's bullying me." Jian hugged her grandma and complained. Mrs. Li glared at her grandson and supported her granddaughter, "Don't listen to your seventh brother's nonsense. My lucky girl is not fat. Eat more. If you delay your growth when you are growing, you will regret it later. Your seventh brother is jealous of you. It's useless even if he is as skinny as a monkey, and he can't wear beautiful dresses." Everyone couldn't help but look at Brother Cat, picturing what he looked like in a skirt in their minds, and then burst out laughing. Brother Cat has become accustomed to Grandma's favoritism. He spread his hands to express his helplessness and continued to swing the chopsticks until they flew up. Soon, the dishes and bowls were all gone, and everyone was full and full. Jian was a little worried about the little girl selling glutinous rice balls. The killer of the Wu family wanted to use the child as a cover, but was afraid that the child would talk nonsense, so he gave her mute medicine. She checked the little girl's pulse in the shop, but she was really not sure. "So, I just asked my uncle to send the child to divine Dr. Zhang. Although the child and her mother were murdered by the killers of the Wu family, the root cause still falls on her. What's more, she also learned medical skills, and she can't turn a blind eye to both public and private matters. At least, help this child heal his throat." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 833. Chapter 833 Differences between Men and Women. With these thoughts in mind, Jian changed her clothes and went to the back of the village to have a look. Jiaran and Muju were talking in the yard. When they saw their sister coming out of the backyard, they smiled and said, "Hello, sister, where are you going?" Muju heard that the reputation passed, and a flash of surprise flashed in his eyes. The clever and eccentric boy before has transformed into a beautiful girl. Wearing an apricot red satin short coat with small sleeves, a silver white floral skirt, and a rose-colored cocoon-faced ermine-lined cloak. Her black hair was simply with a cordyceps pearl hairpin, and her small earlobes were hung with broken gold lilac beads, which made her complexion whiter and her features more picturesque. As she walked, the colorful butterfly palace ribbon and jade ring hanging on her waist swayed slightly, and the deerskin boots under her skirt were looming. Muju slowly lowered his head, and two words suddenly came to his mind. The cardamom years, Zhongling Yuxiu. "Brother, I'm going to see Grandpa Zhang. It's so cold in the yard, why don't you go inside to talk? Jian walked up to talk to her brother. Jiren said, I knew right away that you were going to see Dr. Zhang. If you have nothing to do, I'll go with you. Hey, eldest brother is the best. Jian stepped forward and took his eldest brother's arm, nodded with Muju and walked out. Shui Yun, Shui Yu and Zheng Sanjiang followed behind. Muju walked slowly at the end. Seeing them walking away, he entered the courtyard of the Ye family next door. Yeshan and Dongmei packed up a wing room. Seeing Muju come in, Yeshan smiled and said, Xiao Mu, you can live here with peace of mind from now on. The Marquis should be back in a month. Muju cupped his hands and thanked her, thank you, Uncle Shan and Aunt Mei. After saying that, he lifted up his left sleeve again, revealing the plum blossom birthmark near his elbow, wanting to prove his identity to the two of them. Yeshan and Dongmei both laughed. Yeshan patted him on the shoulder and said, you don't have to be like this, we know you are not pretending to be someone else. The Marquis has told us about your origins in detail before, and even drew a portrait of you himself. We will not admit it wrong. Otherwise, if we met at the shop before, I wouldn't let you follow me back in the car. Don't be restrained from now on. Treat this place as your own home. When the Marquis comes back, I will naturally arrange errands for you. Dongmei also smiled and said, you must have suffered a lot outside in the past few years, and now you are home. You can stay here with peace of mind, eat as much as you want, and play as much as you want. It would be better if you could help us look after the princess on weekdays. The masters of the Li family are very kind, and the princess is an even better person. You will know after getting along with them for a long time. As she spoke, she stuffed Muju with a new coat, trousers and middle coat, and said, there is a hot spring in the right room. Go and wash yourself and go to bed early. When I have free time in the past 2 days, I will make you some more sets of clothes and shoes. After Muju thanked her again, Dongmei took Yeshan out. The room suddenly became quiet. Muju put down his coat and trousers, lay on the kong and let out a long sigh of relief. It is winter, and the folks in the village rarely have leisure time, but they can't stay idle, so snow clearing has become the best job. Not only will you not be too tired, young and old men can get together and laugh while working. So, even though it has been snowing very frequently recently, there is still no snow at all on the roads and paths in the village. As soon as they turned into the back street, they met the village chief and Uncle Zhao, who were strolling on the road, so they couldn't avoid chatting. Seeing that there was no one around, the village chief asked in a low voice, Princess, I see that the elder has sent people to divine Dr. Zhang again. Is there any progress in that matter? Jiyan nodded lightly and said a few words. Yes, Grandpa village chief, my eldest and second uncle have been busy for a long time, and it's finally almost done. Don't worry, old man, just protect the village and don't let bad people take advantage of it. This matter will be over soon. Okay, then we don't have to worry, the village chief breathed a sigh of relief. We have 2 more months to celebrate the new year. We don't want anything else. We just want to be safe and reunited. After talking about some trivial matters in the village and saying goodbye to the village chief and others, the brother and sister went to the back of the village. As a result, as soon as he arrived at the entrance of Divine Dr. Zhang's courtyard, a scream came from inside. Jiren immediately covered his sister's ears, feeling extremely regretful. Had he known that the interrogation was about to begin, he should have come alone. What if I scare my sister? Jiyan is curious and a little eager to go in and have a look, but is a little scared. So she put her feet up and looked into the courtyard. Perhaps when he heard the noise, Li Zhenshen walked out quickly. Seeing his niece at the door, he glared at his nephew and complained in a low voice, why did you bring your sister here? Girls are timid, what if they are scared? I won't be able to sleep at night if your grandma doesn't scold you. Jiren smiled bitterly and said, Uncle, it's my fault. I thought it hadn't started yet, and my sister was worried about the little girl who was poisoned and mute, so I came with her. Li Zhensheng waved his hands towards the courtyard, and Zheng He, who was guarding the door, said something to the room. There was no movement in the room immediately, and Jiren lowered his hands. Jiyan was free and immediately asked, "Uncle, what does Grandpa Zhang say? Is Grandpa Zhang sure that he can cure the little girl's voice? Whatever medicinal materials you need, I have them there." Li Zhensheng nodded and said, "Dr. Zhang said he is 80% sure. He has already given the little girl an injection and will make some medicine for her later. It will take a few days to know whether it can be fully recovered. If you are worried, you can leave someone to help take care of it. It is also convenient to run errands back to find you the medicine. Besides, no one here, Dr. Zhang, can take care of children, and tonight, is a bit busy." Jiyan looked at Shui Ling and Shui Yun. Shui Yun immediately stood up and said, "Princess, let me take care of the little girl." Jiyan nodded. Shui Yun had a good temper and was good at cooking. It was just right to stay. Li Zhensheng immediately started to chase people away. "Jiren stays, Fu Niu hurries back to rest, remember to call brother Li and brother Mao." Obviously, he wanted to take this opportunity to let the boys in the family practice their courage, and also let them participate in doing their part to protect the family. I have to say that Li Zhensheng completely inherited the old lady's double standards. A niece is a treasure. It is best not to be involved in any darkness or dirt in the world, and only live in light and beauty. But sons and nephews must be thrown into the darkness and filth for a few roles, euphemistically called exercise. The good news brought me the joy and burning feeling of being favored, and I hurried home. When I walked to the door, I happened to see Tao Hongying coming back from the second village. She rushed over and hugged my mother's arm, and said with a smile, "Mom, do you know, you are so lucky to be reborn in our family." Tao Hongying was a little dizzy when her daughter slapped her in the face. She subconsciously asked, "What's going on? Have you gotten into trouble again?" "Mom, you underestimate your daughter too much. Wow, I'm so sorry, I'm so touched, and you hit me like this, I'm so sad." Jiyan refused to give in, hugging her mother and protesting like a baby. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 834. Chapter 834. We must seek justice. Tao Hongying didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She patted her daughter on the forehead and said, "You are such a young girl, but you are not as sensible as seeing and you are." But she said she was so disgusted. She knelt down again and said with a smile, "Come on, I will carry you for a few steps, so that you won't feel sad anymore." Jiyan immediately jumped on my mother's back, hugged her neck, and kicked her little feet happily. "My mother is the best." Tao Hongying lifted her daughter up, smiled and sighed, "Mom really can't carry you. It would be nice if your father was at home." Jiyan looked down and saw that there were a few white hairs in her bun, and stopped smiling. Her nose couldn't help but feel sore. There are only 4 people in their family. Her father is away at war, her brother's whereabouts are unknown, and she, a daughter, is getting into trouble all day long. I must be feeling very unhappy. But she is still busy every day, being filial to the elderly, taking care of the children, and being the director of the family. Jiyan quickly struggled to get off my mother's back, then turned to the front and tried her best to carry her on her back. "Mom, I'll carry you on my back too." Tao Hongying didn't know that her daughter felt sorry for her, so she laughed and lay half on her back. "Okay, mother will enjoy the blessing too." Actually, Jiyan's height was only slightly higher than her mother's shoulders, and Tao Hongying only had 2 arms wrapped around her daughter's shoulders. She still had to rely on her own legs to walk. The 2 girls just laughed and entered the yard like conjoined twins. Mrs. Li, Wenjuan, and Wanner were sitting in the main room. Seeing this, they couldn't help laughing. Mrs. Li took the opportunity to persuade her two grandsons-in-law, you have to work hard quickly. No matter what, you must give yourself a daughter. You see how considerate my daughter is and how much time she can spend with her mother. If this was a naughty boy, he would have disappeared long ago. Wanner and Wenjuan both nodded with blushing faces, feeling happy and complicated in their hearts. Left to other people's homes, the elders, regardless of their daughter-in-law's health, work hard to give birth to a baby, all looking forward to having a baby. They are the only ones in the Li family who, from the oldest to the youngest, are all looking forward to having a daughter. That night, when the night was dark, Li Lauer and Mr. Wen came back from the city together. Subsequently, Li Zhensheng brought the three Jiaran brothers into the courtyard. Everyone washed and changed into clean clothes and shoes, and then gathered in the main room to eat. Mrs. Wen knew something had happened during the day, and she was worried about it. She asked sister-in-law Qiang and Aunt Tian to look after Yu Yaer, and she also came to listen for a few words. Orange Mrs. Li and others have finished their meal and are sitting in the east room talking. It wasn't until Li Zhensheng and others finished their meal, the dining table was removed, and tea and fruits were served again, that everyone gathered together. Brother Cat took the fruit plate and ate the oranges. Ji Yan saw that his face looked a little bad and did not stop him. Instead, he asked Shui Ling to go to the backyard to get some pears for him. Mrs. Li has been holding back for a long time, and now she can finally ask a few questions. Zhensheng, these children are afraid that I will worry, so they refuse to elaborate no matter how much I ask. Did someone attack Fu Niu again during the day? Did you catch the bad guy? Li Zhensheng nodded and tried to speak more relaxedly. Mom, don't worry, these children are smart. Someone pretended to be a woman selling glutinous rice and wanted to poison her, but the children discovered the trick early and planned to capture the Wu family. Furthermore, it happened that Zheng Yi, Zheng San, and Mu Ju from the Zheng family had just returned to Xindu from abroad, and they also helped out, and it went very smoothly. Previously, the Wu family plotted against Fu Niuer, but we didn't have enough evidence. Now we don't have to worry about it. We can go to the emperor to complain tomorrow. Li Laotian breathed a long sigh of relief and said, this is really great. These days, Fu Niuer has been kept at home and the child is suffering. I am also worried. Now that we have evidence, the Wu family can't rely on it. The family no longer has to be on guard all the time. After saying that, she frowned again and said, even if you go to the emperor to complain, you still have to think more and be aware of the situation. As far as the emperor is concerned, no matter how bad the empress and the Wu family are, they are still his first wife and father-in-law's family. If things get too big, it will damage the emperor's face to some extent and the emperor will not be happy. But our family is not trying to embarrass the emperor. We just need to seek justice and make sure that no one dares to bully Fu Niuer again. Everyone could hear the concerns in Mrs. Li's words. After all, the Li family's background was too low, and people like the Queen and the Wu family had never been heard of before, let alone being enemies. But the Empress and the Wu family really bullied others too much. The Li family wanted to protect their children and punish their enemies, so the step of filing a complaint was inevitable. Li Lauer quickly said, Mom, don't worry, we know what's going on. I just brought back 2 more witnesses, both of whom were serving Mrs. Wu, and they asked a lot of important information. Not only can we crucify the Wu family, but we can also be exonerated. The emperor will definitely not anger our family, and maybe there will be a reward. Really, Mrs. Li was pleasantly surprised. That's great. Our family doesn't want any rewards, we just want to live a peaceful life. Speaking of which, the Wu family, a wife-like family, can't do anything to help, and is holding back everything. I'm afraid the emperor will also have a headache. Everyone laughed and nodded in agreement. Yes, that boy from the Wu family was unwilling to defend his family and the country, so the queen's grandfather went to the palace to fight to the death and begged for pardon. The young and old of the Wu family are all in vain. They are really incompetent in culture and military affairs. They are just a bunch of losers. After chatting a few more words, everyone made the old lady happy and asked Wan'er and Wenjuan to accompany the old lady to the backyard to rest. But Tao Hongying and Mrs. Wen still had good news, but they stayed. Li Zhensheng and Li Lao then spread out all the evidence they had, and everyone brainstormed how to file a complaint tomorrow. Just like the old lady said, the Li family's request is to punish the Wu family. It is best to throw out the Wang family, the mastermind behind it, to attract the emperor's anger. But the Li family did not want to get involved with the accomplice in the palace who was cooperating with the Wang family. Even, it is best for them to pretend not to know. Since Mr. Ho is not at home, the strength of the Li family alone is still too weak. Furthermore, if it involves the struggle for imperial power, if you are accidentally involved, the Li family will never have peace again. Let's not talk about how the Li family discussed it, just that deep in the palace, after a long time, the queen finally received news from her family. She angrily pulled the veil in her hand and cursed, "Why did you send news about such a big matter?" The maid who was personally serving her felt bitter and did not dare to argue. The Wu family is being investigated by Dali Temple and the Ministry of Punishment. They are thinking behind closed doors. How can they still have their original prestige? Moreover, the queen has never given birth to a prince, and there are rumors everywhere about setting up a prince. Everyone in the palace is fawning over the concubine and her son, so how can they take the queen and the Wu family seriously? The Wu family can send the news in, which is already very good. There is no reason to choose how fast it is. It's a pity that I can't say this to the queen, it only hurts slaves like them. Fortunately, the queen was so frightened by the news that the matter was revealed that she didn't care about anything. How many times did she walk around the house and finally figured out a way to protect herself? This is the third update. This book has 1.8 million words. It's the time when Huahua's writing skills are most tested. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are weekends. Huahua applies for a double update, because she needs to arrange all the outlines and details for the future, so that she can't code words. It goes more smoothly. Wait a little longer, and the third update will start as usual on Monday, so stay tuned for the follow-up episodes, refills. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 835. Chapter 835. The root cause of the queen's illness was found. Go and call the imperial doctor, I have a severe headache. The queen lay directly on the bed, holding her head with both hands, frowning, looking unbearable. The palace maid was stunned for a moment, and a flash of helplessness flashed in her eyes. Yes, Your Majesty, I will send someone to the imperial hospital right now. The queen waved her hands and said no more. The palace maid quickly stepped back and breathed a sigh of relief. Don't worry about whether the master's trick of pretending to be sick is effective or not, as long as she doesn't get angry and beaten. Unfortunately, the doctor on duty at Tai Hospital was not so lucky. During this period of time, the queen complained of headache every day, but the cause could not be found, and they could not say that she was not sick. In the end, I can only prescribe some warm and tonic prescriptions every time, hoping that the queen will find her conscience one day and stop using them as an excuse to see a doctor. Normally, it is about looking, hearing, asking, and understanding, prescribing medicine, and boiling medicine. The queen got angry and poured tea all over the doctor. She scolded her angrily for half an hour before she finally calmed down. In the middle of the night, the cunning palace was in full swing, with lanterns lit everywhere. They were as bright as targets in the huge palace, and it was difficult not to pay attention. And in the palace, not to mention people, even a ray of wind is a master who leads you in and carries news. As long as it is within the palace wall, let alone an inconspicuous mouse hole, don't even think about hiding any secrets. Therefore, The Queen of Cunning Palace did not wait to blow the medicine soup to cool down, and the masters of each palace had already heard about it clearly. There was a concubine lying on the bed, whispering to the maid who was waiting next to her. "We, the mother of the country, don't know where our brains have gone, we are getting stupider day by day." In the past, she was arrogant at most, but now she adds the word stupid. She really wants to have a prince, and she wants all the old dogs on the street to know about it. As a result, I still complain about being sick every day and drink medicinal soup as water every day. I can't even think of giving birth to a child if my good body continues to suffer like this. What the Empress said is that the Cunning Palace is filled with the smell of medicine, and whoever goes there will want to take a detour. The personal palace maid smiled and said, "But it is a good thing that she is stupid, so that the emperor can find that the master is smart and virtuous, and come to accompany him more often." Where is the master? Maybe by this time next year, the master will have the little prince in his arms. Haha, that's the truth. Go to sleep. I heard that the emperor has been coughing recently. I will stew a cup of snow pears and send it to you tomorrow. The concubine happily made her plans and went to sleep contentedly. But in the imperial study room in front, the emperor was wearing bright yellow pajamas, holding a book in his hand, and his brows were frowning tightly. The queen called the imperial doctor again. "What's the reason this time?" The emperor was very impatient. After all, a good life is nothing but asking for medical advice every day, which makes everyone feel bad. Manager Yi carefully poured the emperor soothing tea and said, "I heard that I still have a headache. The imperial doctor has prescribed a prescription. I think the queen must have taken the medicine and fallen asleep by now." "Humph," the emperor snorted coldly, threw down the book in his hand, and cursed in a low voice, "It's a medicine that's 3 parts poisonous. She's been drinking it for several months. She's trying to poison herself to death." Nowadays, there are signs of establishing a prince in the court from time to time, but he can suppress it for the time being. Just saying that the dragon body is healthy and the spring and autumn are in full swing can make everyone shut up. But if the queen tortures herself to death, someone will definitely make a fuss about establishing a queen. And the new queen's child is the legitimate child, the perfect candidate for the prince. It is inevitable that there will be another storm and the court will be in turmoil. The emperor became more and more irritable as he thought about it, and ordered, "Tomorrow, the doctor from Zayatai Hospital will come to Cunning Palace to give the queen a good diagnosis and treatment. It is best to find out the real root cause of the disease and don't let her take medicine randomly." General Manager Yi quickly agreed, served the emperor, drank the soothing tea, and then rested. Neither the master nor the servant expected that the root cause of the queen's illness would be found early the next morning before the doctor entered the Cunning Palace. The emperor was sitting behind the desk. He was very happy when he saw Li Laoer and Ji Yin coming to pay their respects. He said, "Fu Niu hasn't come to see me for a long time. Hurry and get up." Ji Yin lowered his head and said cautiously, "I also want to see Uncle Huang, but I'm not allowed to go out at home." She wore a light blue brocade coat today, paired with a moon-white pleated skirt, with 2 braids and 2 simple pearl hair bands. Moreover, her ears and wrists were bare. Her face was even smaller against her slaps, and the circles under her eyes were black. Coupled with her slightly white lips, she looked very haggard. This is so different from her usual festive and noble dress. If it is a little sun on weekdays, then today it is just a dry little wildflower swaying in the cold wind. The emperor felt more and more distressed as he watched, and couldn't help but ask, "Didn't Fu Niu get better from being sick before? Isn't it easy? There is also an old ginseng tree in the warehouse. I will ask Manager Yi to find it soon and bring it back to you." Ji Yin's eyes were red at that time, and he choked and said, "Uncle Huang, I'm not sick, I'm just scared. I want to find my adoptive father, my father. Uncle Huang, can you send someone to take me there?" The emperor was confused when he heard the news, and felt even more distressed when he saw the tears dripping from his eyes as he cried at the good news. After all, this is the little girl he has watched grow up, and he promised to take good care of her when her cousin went off to war. He hurriedly said, "Don't cry, Funiur, why do you have to go find your adoptive father? Didn't you tell me when you were a child that Uncle Huang is the greatest in the world, even more powerful than your adoptive father? Who bullied you? Tell Uncle Huang, and Uncle Huang will support you." Ji Yin lowered his head and just wiped his tears without saying a word. Seeing this, General Manager Yi quickly said to Li Laoer, "Uncle Li, what kind of injustice has the princess suffered? The princess is a girl and timid. Please tell me quickly and don't make the emperor anxious." Unexpectedly, Li Laoer lifted up his robe and fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, Funiur has been sensible since she was a child. She didn't want the emperor to be in trouble, so she thought of finding the marquis and her father to take shelter. But she is still young and can't think of much. This world belongs to the emperor. No matter how powerful or lawless anyone is, they can't get past the emperor." The emperor nodded. At this moment, he also guessed that the Li family was being bullied, but what Li Laoer said touched his heart. Tianwu is his world, there is nothing he can't control. He asked with a stern face, "Uncle Zhongshan, tell me, what's going on? Don't hide it. I want to hear who is lawless." Ji Yin was a little anxious. He stepped forward and pulled the emperor's sleeves, with a worried look on his face, "Uncle Huang." The emperor patted her back and comforted her, "Don't be afraid, Uncle Huang is not angry. You are my own princess, and I want to see who dares to bully you and who is so bold." Li Laoer took a deep breath, as if trying to suppress the grievance and resentment in his heart. He started from the beginning, "Your Majesty, some people in Zindu previously said that Funiur was very lucky. Our family felt that it was not good for a girl to be talked about like this. So Funiur pretended to avoid the limelight. I went to the palace to ask for an old ginseng tree, and that was how I settled the matter. You must remember that, right?" The emperor nodded and replied, "Remember, I want to send an imperial doctor. You said it is a temporary measure for the family, so forget it." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 836. Chapter 836. Victory comes too easily. Yes, Your Majesty, our family also thought that this matter was over. But I didn't expect that within a few days, someone would send a dead soldier to assassinate Funiur. Li Laoer continued, and the emperor and manager Yi both frowned in surprise. A dead soldier, the emperor did not believe it. "Are you sure you are a dead soldier?" "Your Majesty, it was my little grandson's full moon wine day, and two assassins came. One poisoned and caused chaos, and the other wanted to kidnap Funiur. After the failure, they gritted their fangs and vomited black blood and died. Our family then guessed that they were dead soldiers. After all, ordinary people are not so vicious. Fortunately it was discovered in time, otherwise our whole family would be dead now." Li Laoer still gritted his teeth with hatred when he thought about the danger that day. "Your Majesty, I don't know where we offended someone in our family, and we were treated like this. I don't know what the other party wants to do by kidnapping Funiur, so they can only keep Funiur at home and not let her come out. But yesterday Funiur was a naughty child. She dressed up as a boy and went to the shop with the boys at home. As a result, she was assassinated by a dead soldier again. Fortunately, Prince Lu Zonglu went with us and brought his guards with him, and finally the three assassins were caught. There were also two men and the steward who were responsible for informing the news, and they were all arrested. Can we find out who is behind the scenes?" the emperor urged. At this moment, he was more curious than angry. He also wanted to know which family in Zindu was raising dead soldiers. Li Laoer hesitated for a moment, but still said, "Everyone confessed, and they obeyed the orders of the Wu family of Jiangning Marquis Mansion. What? Impossible. The emperor's expression changed at that time, and there was an indescribable shock in his eyes. Neither Li Lao nor Ji Yin could tell anything was wrong. As a result, Manager Yi stepped forward to cover for the emperor again and whispered comfortingly, "Your Majesty, what Uncle Li said must be well founded. You should calm down first and then listen to what Uncle Li has to say." The emperor came back to his senses and said in a deep voice, "Ai Ching continues, no matter who it is, I will definitely make the decision for you." Li Lao suppressed the doubts in his heart and said quickly, "Your Majesty, my ministers and my family can't believe it either. Because our Li family has never had any grievances with the Jiangning Haofu. Why would the Haofu attack our family, especially the child Fu Niuer?" He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I ask the emperor to forgive me. In order to find out this matter, I asked the veterans at home to go to the nearby Marquis mansion to inquire. It happened that Mrs. Wu's personal maid came out of the house, so I had her tied up. After interrogation, I finally found out the whole story. It turns out that Mrs. Wu heard from an old Taoist priest that my Fu Niuer is blessed. If the queen can drink a bowl of Fu Niuer's blood, she will be able to borrow good luck and become pregnant with the prince immediately." Nonsense. The emperor couldn't bear it anymore. He slapped the table and cursed, "Have the Wu family's brains been eaten by dogs? You actually believe such nonsense?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Li Lao's eyes turned red with hatred. Anyone who heard this would know it was a lie, but the Wu family believed it. They sent dead soldiers to assassinate Fu Niuer again and again, trying to cut out Fu Niuer's heart. Our family doesn't want to cause any trouble to the emperor, and we don't want the emperor to have to deal with such troublesome matters besides worrying about government affairs. But Your Majesty, everyone in my family who has some ability is out there serving the country loyally. I am the only useless person left in the family, living with the elderly and children. I really don't have the ability to protect Fu Niuer. Please make the decision for our family and protect Fu Niuer's life. My fourth son treats my daughter as an eyeball. He is braving the wind and snow in the north and killing barbarians, but my daughter's heart and liver were torn out at home. I, the elder brother, can't explain it." Li Lao kowtows and cries as he talks. His sobs were loud, making everyone feel sad. The emperor was so guilty that he couldn't even face it. With all the powerful and high-ranking officials in the civil and military dynasties and Zindu, one by one, they are all living in a corner, drunk and dreaming. Only the Li family has titles and fiefs, but they refuse to be lazy at all. Those who are able to fight at home go to battle to kill the enemy, those who are able to run boats go out to look for new seeds, and even the young men are killing Japanese pirates and sending envoys abroad. The remaining old, weak, women and children took the trouble to grow some vegetables and fruits, and happily sent them to the palace to give him a change of taste. They are such a loyal, hard-working, and sincere family. As an emperor, he did not give them any generous rewards, but instead made them suffer such great injustice. It is really shameful. Especially those who bully the Li family are the gang of losers from the Jiangning Marquis mansion. No wonder the queen was ill last night. She must have known that her family had planned this for her and it failed, so she was trying to avoid responsibility by claiming to be ill. For so many years, he only thought that his first wife was stupid, but he didn't expect that she and her natal family would hide so deeply. Perhaps back then. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He grabbed the tea bowl and smashed it into pieces, and then said loudly, "According to my decree, the Jiangning Marquis mansion has failed to live up to the king's kindness. It is a heinous crime. The whole family will be demoted to common people, and everyone will be imprisoned, waiting to be punished." "Yes, Your Majesty." Manager Yi responded quickly. The imperial edict was quickly drafted and then sent to the table. The emperor personally picked up the jade seal and printed it heavily. The midday sun in winter shines on the palace gate and the city walls on both sides, bringing a slight warmth. This is also the favorite moment for the guards. They can just be lazy for a while, bask in the sun, rub their hands that are red from the cold, and stamp their numb feet. At this time, a group of people suddenly came out of the palace gate, and the leader was actually Manager Yi, who was beside the emperor. All the guards immediately stood up straight and did not dare to be lazy and fish. Manager Yi directed the young to deliver all the things in his hands to the Li family's carriage, and then he saluted and said, "Uncle, you and the princess go slowly. I have to go to Jiangning Hao's mansion, so I won't accompany you." Li Laoer quickly returned the favor and said with a smile, "Sorry, sir." After saying that, he hesitated for a moment and whispered as if gossiping, "This matter really caused trouble for the emperor today. You said Mrs. Wu was fine at home. Why did she want to go to Qingcheng to visit it in such a cold weather? She went right away. Why did she happen to meet an old immortal again? The queen is the same. She doesn't want to discuss such a big matter with the emperor. There is no one around her to advise her. Why is the queen allowed to act more and more?" After saying that, he seemed to realize that he had overstepped his bounds, so he quickly stopped talking and saluted with a dry smile. Manager Yi's eyes flashed, and he had some concerns in his mind, but he still smiled and pretended that he didn't understand. After a few more idle words, Li Laoer got into the carriage with the good news. The carriage quickly ran away, and Ji Yan breathed a sigh of relief until the palace wall was no longer visible. The same is true for Li Laoer. The two men looked at each other and said in unison, "There's something wrong with this." 2 more updates. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 837. Chapter 837. Good dreams are destined to be broken. Li Laoer lowered his voice and said, "Even if the emperor is particularly protective of our Li family, he will not punish the Wu family so harshly regardless of the queen's face. Even the emperor didn't ask any questions, he just convicted the Wu family with just a few words from us." Ji Yan also nodded, spread his hands, and said helplessly, "Yes, second uncle, I prepared a lot of words, but before I even said a few words, the Wu family was imprisoned." Li Laoer frowned, thought about it for a long time, and asked in a low voice, "Fu Niuer, do you remember that the emperor looked particularly bad when he heard that there was a dead soldier in the Wu family? It's not just bad, it can be said that his face is ashen." Ji Yan started thinking and began to guess, is it because the emperor underestimated his father-in-law? Suddenly he heard that the Wu family was hiding so deeply, and he felt that he had been deceived for so many years, so he was angry, so powerful, so cruel. Li Laoer shook his head. "No, almost all the wealthy and powerful people in the new capital have some secret personnel. Logically speaking, the emperor shouldn't be so surprised and angry." The two of them were sitting in the carriage, talking to each other. After studying the whole thing, they still had no clue. "I don't say what happened to them, but I just said that in Cunning Palace, the queen was seriously ill and was lying on the bed to rest after taking medicine. She couldn't help complaining. I summoned the imperial doctor last night. Why haven't the third princess come to visit yet? This child is really getting more and more unpleasant." The maid who was beating her legs was helpless, so she forced herself to persuade her in a low voice, "Your Majesty, the princess has more and more subjects to study now, and classes haven't ended yet. As soon as class is over, I will come over immediately." The queen snorted coldly and said no more. Before the maid could relax, someone shouted loudly from outside and rushed in. "Mother, my mother is not good." A little palace maid's pigtails were about to fall apart when she ran away, and she fell to her knees with a thud as soon as she entered the room. The queen sat up from the bed in shock. The eldest maid hurried over and gave the younger maid a slap in the face, scolding, "How presumptuous! Your Majesty is resting, who gave you the courage to come here and yell?" The little palace maid covered her face and said aggrievedly, "This slave is guilty, but, The Marquis has been imprisoned. House Mansion was imprisoned. The Queen was stunned for a moment, stood up suddenly, and asked sternly, "What did you say?" The eldest palace maid was also so frightened that her legs went weak, and she quickly gave the little palace maid a hand. Before the little palace maid could say anything, another rushed in and shouted loudly, "Madam, Eunuch Feng has led people to seal the gate of our cunning palace." The Queen couldn't bear it any more, so she ran out with her feet up, and everyone followed her with cheers. Eunuch Feng led the people to slowly close the door. When the Queen finally arrived, he smiled and saluted. The Queen's face turned pale, and she had some vague guesses in her mind, but she still asked, "Eunuch Feng, what's going on? Why do you want to seal the gate of this palace?" Eunuch Feng looked very respectful, making it impossible for outsiders to find any courtesy at all, but the words he spoke were as piercing as a knife. "Mother, the Emperor has an edict. The Jiangning Marquis mansion has failed to live up to the Emperor's favor and has committed a heinous crime. The entire family has been demoted to common people and sent to prison to await questioning. Your Majesty feels sorry for your Majesty. He knows that your Majesty is ill, and he is afraid that you will become worried, so he ordered his servants to seal off the cunning palace and ask your Majesty to rest in peace and recover from her illness." "No, it's impossible." The Queen was really anxious and raised her legs to rush out. Unfortunately, Eunuch Feng waved his hand and the little quickly closed the palace door. The Queen was so angry that she no longer cared about her image, and slapped the palace door as hard as a mad woman. "Be bold, open the door quickly, let me out, I want to see the Emperor." Eunuch Feng stood outside the door, picked his ears, and said in a nonchalant manner, "Queen, please calm down, the servants are also obeying orders. You can rest in peace and recuperate. When the Emperor is no longer angry, he will let you out." After saying that, he ignored the commotion inside and left with Shi Shiren. The reason why Uncle Li and Princess Kangol came to the palace today is not known to others, but they, who serve the Emperor closely, cannot hide it. Princess Kang Li is such a good girl, and the Wu family wants to bully her. It's really shameful. What he did just now was a small way of venting his anger for the princess, and it was worthy of the fruits he had eaten when he went in and out of Li's house before. At the moment, the Jiangning Marquis mansion is in a state of panic, with ghosts crying and wolves howling. Both Mr. Wu and Mrs. Wu had guessed what would happen if the incident failed, but the Empress was their greatest source of confidence. To put it shamelessly, they are the Emperor's father-in-law and mother-in-law. If you remove the word law-in-law, they are parents. If the parents are at fault, who as a child can kill them? Besides, even if they plotted against that girl from the Li family, what would happen? They are doing it for the Queen and the royal bloodline. Furthermore, the girl from the Li family is not dead, not even a hair has fallen out. They have some extra money at home, so the matter is easily solved. Unfortunately, good dreams are destined to be broken. General Manager Yi personally brought the imperial edict and led a group of soldiers to break into the gate. They were fooled. The old Marquis was hanging with one breath left, but when he heard that his whole family had become common people and was sentenced to prison, he ran away with his last breath and rolled his eyes directly to see the Lord of Hell. The old lady was not in good health and could not bear the blow, so she also lay down at that time. Mr. Wu Er and Mrs. Wu Er felt as if they were hit by a thunderbolt from the blue, their faces turned black. The eldest brother and sister-in-law were suddenly reported by the imperial censor, and they were punished to shut up and think about their mistakes. They were so affected by the big house that they could not even raise their heads when they went out. They didn't care about it, but now they actually have to go to jail together. What evil have they done? You won't get any good things, and you won't miss any bad things. Mrs. Wu was crying sadly, "Oh, let's go and see the Emperor. The Emperor can't be so cruel. We are his parents-in-law. Even if we are wrong, it is for the sake of the Queen and the royal heirs." Before she could finish her words, Mrs. Wu couldn't bear it anymore and rushed over. She slapped her twice with her hand and cursed wildly. "I'll beat you to death, you old bitch. I just assumed that you were stupid and brought trouble to the family. I didn't expect it was really you. Tell me, what have you done? All good things happen to you, and bad things happen to us all. Say it quickly." Mrs. Wu was stunned. She turned around and spat out a mouthful of blood. When she regained consciousness, she yelled, "Bitch, how dare you hit me?" She rushed forward and was about to fight back, but unfortunately her natural size did not give her an advantage, and she was crushed to the ground by Mrs. Wu within 2 seconds. Mrs. Wu doesn't want to ask the reason anymore. She can vent all the grievances she has accumulated over the years today. She rode on Mrs. Wu, opened her bow from left to right, and slapped her hands vigorously. "I asked you to talk about the Queen's daughter, who is just a hen that doesn't lay eggs. What do you have to be proud of? I make you act like a sister-in-law every day, just like someone who owes you 80,000 taels of silver. I'll give you a mouth, and you'll know how bad our second wife is every day. I'll let you." Mrs. Wu was crushed one-sidedly, and in the blink of an eye her nose was bruised and her face was swollen. Mrs. Wu still remembered to change her moves when she was furious. "When I got tired of the 18 dragon subduing palms, I switched to the 9 yin white bone claws and scratched a layer of red stripes on my sister-in-law's face." Mr. Wu hugged his parents and was crying hard. He finally found some time and finally saw his daughter-in-law who was dying to death. He was about to step forward to rescue him, but he didn't want to be caught by his second brother again. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 838. Chapter 838. 4 words, 4 mountains. "Brother, tell the truth, what have you done? Why did the emperor punish our family? You must make it clear. Although we live together, we are already separated, so the guild has nothing to do with us." Mr. Wu was also anxious. His daughter had just given birth to a fat grandson for the Duke's palace. The couple were about to have a wedding banquet, but they suddenly became prisoners. Who can bear this? Mr. Wu was also very angry. He threw away his brother's pull and cursed, "How do I know? If you want to know, ask the emperor. Why didn't you go ask the emperor about the trouble you caused?" Mr. Wu was so angry at his brother's rogue appearance that he punched him with his fist. Needless to say, the two brothers are in a team when you come and I go back and forth. The masters were in such a panic that the slaves had no backbone and were running around like headless flies. Those who are too thoughtful have already rushed to the master's room and secretly put gold and silver jewelry in their arms to find a way out for themselves. Mr. Wu and Mr. Wu's concubines and concubines didn't know what had happened. They held their heads and cried together. The entire home mansion was so prosperous before, but now it is so chaotic. Mr. Yi personally led people to search Mr. Wu's study and obtained some key things. He also arrested 2 more purges, tied them up and gagged them, and waited to be taken back for questioning. When he returned to the main courtyard, he saw that Mr. Ho passed away, Mrs. Ho was half dead, and the 2 rooms of the Wu family were beaten like black-eyed chickens. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. I wonder if the Queen Mother had foreseen today when she chose the daughter of the Wu family for the emperor to be the queen. If this is really the case, then I have to admire her for being very calculating. The queen has been in the palace for so many years, not only can she not give birth to a prince, nor can she teach the princess well, but even the Wu family is a master at holding back. Manager Yi sighed and waved his hand behind him. A moment later, the door of Jiangninghao mansion was completely opened, and hundreds of Wu family members, old and young, from masters to slaves, were all tied to ropes and escorted out. This can make the curious onlookers outside the door completely shocked. They knew something was going on in the Wu family just now when they saw the soldiers surrounding the gate of the Ho mansion, but they couldn't guess such a violent result even if they broke their heads. What on earth did the Wu family commit that caused the whole family to be imprisoned? This is the Queen's natal family. Looking at Mr. Wu and Mr. Wu and Mr. and Mrs. Wu, it is even more miserable. The men had their clothes torn, their mouths torn, and their cheeks swollen. The women simply had their hair disheveled, their coats and skirts were scattered, their shoes were missing, and their original appearance was no longer visible. What kind of serious crime was this committed, and he actually had to be beaten up before going to jail? Some people immediately ran away and went around to report the news. Before the Wu family walked out of Erliti in tears, the whole Zindu knew that the Wu family was in trouble. Some people sighed, some gloated, and even more people were scratching their heads and curious. The Duke's mansion in the town was holding a third party, and the courtyard was full of guests. When he suddenly heard the news, the Crown Prince quickly led people out of the house. Having been married for 2 years, he can be regarded as a prodigal son. The couple is harmonious and their life is prosperous. Now that something happened to his parents-in-law, he couldn't sit back and ignore it no matter what. General Manager Yi was riding a horse to the Wu family to Dali Temple. Suddenly he saw the Duke of Zhenqiu approaching on horseback, and he smiled and bowed his hands. The prince of the country took his hand and greeted him politely. When Manager Yi retracted his hand, he stuffed the banknotes in his sleeves without leaving any trace, and then told the story again. The Crown Prince's expression changed on the spot. If the Wu family has a specific crime, there is still room for change, but the 4 words disappointing the king's kindness are simply 4 big mountains. No one can move them away, and no one dares to move them. Because these 4 words represent that the Wu family has offended Huang Wei. The Crown Prince sent someone home to report the news, and at the same time rushed to the Zhongning Marquis mansion. The Marquis's mansion is being raided, and no one is paying attention to the dead old Marquis in the backyard. The prince quickly found a car and took the old Marquis body to a courtyard outside the city. He hung up the spiritual flag and held a hasty funeral. Some people saw him, and they looked at this young man with admiration. At this time, if you dare to approach the Wu family and help with the aftermath, it can be considered a sign of kindness. Not to mention that the city's gossip hot list has been refreshed again, but that Li Lao'er and Ji Yin have returned to Sujintan, and everyone who has been waiting with anxiety is finally relieved. Fu Niu'er, you are back. Mrs. Li grabbed her granddaughter's hand and looked her up and down. Good news can't help but be funny. They went to the palace to complain, and the evidence was solid, so they couldn't be beaten. She hugged her grandma's arm, looked at the family members around her, and said quickly, "The emperor has made the decision for our family, and the entire Wu family has been imprisoned." Seriously? Ha ha ha, that's great, you deserve it. You deserve it. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Everyone was so happy that they started shouting. Jiaran noticed some clues and frowned slightly, but then he also put on a smile. Everyone gathered around Li Lao'er and Ji Yin into the house. They sat down and asked questions carefully. Mr. Wen and Li Zhensheng are still in the city, guarding against any changes in this matter. Tao Hongying, along with Wan'er and Wenjuan, the 3 Jiaran brothers, Lu Zong and Mrs. Wen, as well as the village chief and Uncle Zhao, all gathered together. Li Lao'er told it from beginning to end. Of course the emphasis was on the emperor's justice and sage, and everyone was grateful and happy to hear it. Tonight, I will personally cook some delicious dishes to celebrate, Tao Hongying suggested with a smile. Wan'er and Wenjuan also joined in the fun and shouted for help, so they went to the side room to discuss the menu. Li Lao'er called Jiaran, "Follow me to Dr. Zhang. Someone from the palace will come to a few witnesses soon." Jiaran understood and immediately followed his father. For a while, the remaining people chatted for a few words and dispersed. Ji Yin went back to the backyard to change clothes, but was chased by her grandma. "Fu Niu'er, according to grandma's wishes, I can cut the Wu family into pieces without any regrets. But to the emperor, those are his father-in-law and mother-in-law, so it's impossible for him not to show some mercy. Mrs. Li frowned and said, Grandma has already thought about it. If the emperor treats the Wu family lightly, our family will start to move south slowly after the Chinese New Year. If we can't afford to offend, we can still hide. We will find opportunities to move back in the future revenge. But the emperor is like this and has thrown the Wu family into prison. All of a sudden I feel even more uneasy. Jiyan didn't expect that Grandma had so many calculations and even had to move to protect her. She quickly leaned into her grandma's ear and said a few words. Mrs. Li finally breathed a sigh of relief. It turns out it's not all because of our family. No wonder. Jiyan smiled and said, Grandma, no matter what the reason is, if the Wu family is unlucky, it is a good thing. I can go out wherever I want from now on. No. Old Mrs. Li was cautious and rarely poured cold water on her granddaughter. For the time being, you should stay at home honestly for half a month, just in case the Wu family has a backup plan. It won't be too late for you to go out after your eldest and second uncles have completely settled the matter. Grandma, Jiyan protested coquettishly, but unfortunately was cruelly dismissed. The faint afterglow of the winter sunset shines in the new capital, and even the idle people who are keen on gossip are now speeding up to go home. In a tavern near the city gate, two burly young men walked in suddenly. As soon as they entered the door, they threw a dime to the boy, quickly ordered some food, lowered their heads and wolfed it down. 2 more updates. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 839. Chapter 839. The Li family has been having bad luck recently. When he was half full, the young man in black called the boy again, threw him a handful of copper coins and asked, Brother, we have been going to the south for more than a year, and when we suddenly came back, we are really not familiar with anything in Zindu. Look at what's new recently, tell us a few words, and let us enjoy the excitement. There was no one in the shop at the moment, even the shopkeeper had gone back to the backyard to eat. The young man had nothing to do, and he had a reward, so he carefully hid the copper coins and started talking in high spirits. Whose house in Nanchinj was robbed, and whose daughter in Zikan eloped with someone. After a few words, he was interrupted by the young man in black. Little brother, our new capital is under the emperor's feet, won't this be the only trivial matter? Are you talking about important matters in the court? The boy immediately changed his tune and responded repeatedly, yes, of course. Something big just happened today. The queen's mother's family, the Wu family of the Marquis of Zhongning Mansion, had their house confiscated and their entire family imprisoned. The old Marquis couldn't bear the blow and died at that time. We are usually a glamorous nobleman, but we are led to the yamen like a grasshopper. It's so miserable, we can't even see it. But I heard that the eldest young master of the Wu family, who was the queen's biological brother, was fooling around outside at the time and took the opportunity to run away without being caught. Another young man in grey asked curiously, did the Wu family make a big mistake that requires the whole family to be imprisoned? The young man looked around and saw no one, so he lowered his voice and said, I heard that the emperor was offended, so he sent an order directly to the Wu family, saying that the Wu family had failed the emperor. But some people say that the Wu family offended the Li family and was sued by the Li family. Li family? The two young men looked at each other, and the young man in black asked, which Li family? Who else could it be from the Li family? The young man seemed to have found a sense of superiority and spoke more. Of course it's the Li family of Sujintan. I heard that Uncle Li and Princess Kangal entered the palace in the morning, and after they left the palace, the imperial edict was sent to the Zhongning Marquis mansion. So, everyone guessed that the Li family instigated the emperor to rectify the Wu family. The young man in black sneered and retorted, "It's ridiculous. How wise is the emperor? Why would he just listen to a few words and send his father-in-law and his family to prison?" The young man was stunned for a moment, and finally he suddenly realized, "Oh, that's the truth. The Li family usually behaves well, how could they harm the Wu family for no reason? It's definitely not the Li family's instigation, maybe it's just a coincidence." "Yes, that's what you said," the young man in gray smiled honestly and complimented casually, "I have traveled all over the country for so long, and the second brother is really the smartest and most sensible one among the guys I have met." The younger brother was proud of the praise, but he said modestly, "Hey, I just said it casually. Actually, the Li family has a good reputation. No one believes that their family does bad things, it's just that the Li family has not been very lucky recently." While we were busy chatting, the young man started talking about the Li family affairs. Princess Kangol was seriously ill and spent a lot of money to seek medical treatment, but she was restored to health over and over again. Why did the Li family have a great-grandson and hold a banquet at the Earl's mansion? The young man in black and the young man in gray listened from beginning to end. Finally, seeing that the boy had nothing to say, the two young men rewarded him with a handful of copper coins and then left in a hurry. The young man got dozens of cash in extra money, but he was so happy that he just looked forward to having more guests like this. Let's not talk about how he had sweet dreams, just say that these two young people are Ji Yi and Lu Yang. They walked in the night of Zindu, hesitating for a moment whether to leave the city quickly or go to the Earl's mansion to stay for one night. Suddenly, a horse entered the city gate. The knight on the horse held up the flag and shouted loudly, "Good news, good news! Great victory in Jiangbei. The Northern Expeditionary Army killed 20,000 enemies and captured 8,000. With a few words, the city that was about to become quiet suddenly became lively again. Everyone ran to the streets. Someone asked loudly, "Is this a good news from Jiangbei? The Marquis has won again." "Yes, killed 20,000 barbarians, 20,000, others echoed and danced with joy. "The Marquis is mighty, and the Northern Army is mighty." Ji Yi and Lu Yang were happy to be among the crowd. Lu Yang lowered his voice and said, "That's great. Fourth uncle and Uncle Daong must have also made meritorious deeds. They should be promoted again this time. When General Tang arrives in the new capital, we will definitely get rewards after we sacrifice the prisoners. By then our broken gold beach will be completely famous." Ji Yi's brows jumped when he heard this and his smile dropped. Lu Yang had lived and ate with him for so many years and was more familiar with him than a real brother. He immediately guessed that something was wrong with him, so he quickly dragged him into an alley. "Ji Yi, what's wrong? You're not jealous of your fourth uncle and the others, are you?" Lu Yang joked. Sure enough, Ji Yi patted him and whispered, "What nonsense are you talking about? I suddenly thought of 4 words, great achievements surpass the master. Have great achievements to outshine the master?" Lu Yang blinked twice, came to his senses, and asked, "Are you afraid that the court will be jealous of our family?" Ji Yi nodded. "Grandma used to say, you're not afraid of good things happening, you're afraid of not being good people. Your Majesty, Su Shi, has no doubts about the Marquis and our family, and he is also happy that our family has produced so many generals who are dedicated to protecting our family and country. But there are people who are jealous of Bao Qi and go to the emperor to say something that shouldn't be said. Now Tianwu only has the Jiangbei defense line, our Helan army in the southeast, and the hoarding of troops in the important towns in the southwest. The Northern Expedition Army is in the hands of the Marquis. My fourth uncle and Uncle Daong are both generals. We are also in the Helan army and we are on our own. It can be said that except for the important towns in the southwest, our family already controls most of the military power. 3 people become a tiger if the emperor hears it too much, he may be afraid and want to gather military power. But the Marquis and the fourth uncle only wanted to regain Jiangbei and drive the barbarians out of Tianwu. After these few years of hard work, next year may be the time for the general offensive, and we cannot afford to delay it even a little bit. Hearing this, Liu Yang quickly turned around in his mind and asked hesitantly, "Do you want to defeat yourself?" Ji Yi smiled and did not answer. He just said, "Let's go around first and find out what is going on between our family and the Wu family. It's not too late to talk." Liu Yang nodded and walked to the door of his house. He could stay for a month or two this time, not less than a few days. In Broken Gold Beach, everyone dispersed after having a sumptuous dinner. This matter about the Wu family was like a sword that had been hanging over their heads for many days. Now it was taken away all at once. There is no need to worry about someone suddenly coming to cause trouble. I have to say that the Li family has finally found a peaceful life. Even Mrs. Li went to bed very early today and did not stand by the oil lamp to do needlework. Hearing the quietness in the backyard, Ji Yan wrapped himself in a thick cloak and took Shui Ling, who was on duty at night, to Wen's house next door. Sure enough, the three brothers Li Zhensheng, Li Laoer and Ji Aran, plus Mr. Wen, all gathered together to drink tea and talk. Everyone was surprised when they saw the good news coming through the door. Li Zhensheng asked, "Why hasn't Fu Niu fallen asleep?" Ji Yan smiled and sat down next to her eldest brother, and replied, "At the dinner table, no one said anything about what happened during the day. I guessed that you were afraid that Grandma would worry, so you were discussing it secretly behind your back. Sure enough, I got caught." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 840. Chapter 840. Even if life is too prosperous, it is also a worry. Everyone laughed. Brother Cat poured hot tea for his sister and let her hold it to warm her hands. Brother Li moved the charcoal basin to his sister's feet, so he put up a cover to avoid her accidentally burning the corners of her skirt. Li Zhensheng then continued what he had said before and said, "Originally, we had planned that the emperor would definitely protect the Wu family and make our family's grievances become trivial. When the time comes, our family will pretend to be disheartened, build more properties in Quanzhou, and leave a way out. I didn't expect that the emperor would deal such cruelty to the Wu family, completely ignoring the queen's face. This was simply too unexpected. The news has not spread yet, but I think it will be kept secret for a few days. By then everyone will know that the emperor punished the Wu family because our family complained, and our family will definitely be pushed to the forefront. Soon, Mr. Ho and Lao Si will be back." Nanbian shop also sent news before, and Ji Yi and Liu Yang also made contributions in Heilun County. Together like this, the flowers are blooming and the fire is cooking oil, which is not a good thing for our Li family. Li Laoer nodded in agreement. Fortunately, before leaving the palace, the emperor asked for all the witnesses, and also deliberately concealed the reason for the enmity between the Wu family and our family. I see, the emperor doesn't want to involve the queen, and he doesn't want to depose the queen. This is the only advantage, so Fu Niu doesn't have to get involved in rumors." Everyone nodded. Mr. Wen thought for a while and then said, "Everything should be done in a certain way, and our family is going too far now. This matter about the Wu family has already happened in the eyes of outsiders. Our family is prosperous. There is no way to clarify this matter for the time being. What if the emperor has other arrangements and our family needs to be a cover? We don't want to spoil the emperor's affairs. After all, we can only start from Bai Zhenjun and Jia Yi's side to find a way to balance this degree." Jiaran shook his head. "Teacher, I'm afraid the Northern Expedition Army won't be able to do it. The victory of the Northern Expedition was not just for my fourth uncle and Uncle Daong, but also for tens of thousands of soldiers who sacrificed their lives and blood. We cannot bury their achievements just to avoid the limelight for our family." Li Laoer sighed, raised his hand to pour himself tea, and said, "Jiaran is right. Well, I'll write to Ji Yi tomorrow to ask what his plans are, and we'll discuss it later." "Okay, Li Zhensheng joked and gave everyone a reassuring pill. Other families are angry that their children and grandchildren have no future, and if they hear what we say tonight, their eyes will turn red with jealousy. Everyone laughed. There is nothing you can do about it, living a prosperous life is also a worry. After a few more gossips, everyone quietly dispersed. As soon as the city gate opened the next day, Jie Huan rushed home to report the news. The northern expedition is a great victory, and the Marquis will be back soon. This news seemed to have wings and flew all over Zincan and Second Village in an instant. Everyone is beaming with joy. Especially in Erkin, almost half of the men in the family are the Marquis personal guards. The backbone is coming back, which makes the women and children in the family almost go crazy with joy. The women were very busy drying the bedding, cleaning the house, killing chickens, and cutting meat. The children are even more exaggerated. In addition to eating, sleeping, and studying, they always guard the intersection, expecting their father to suddenly appear on horseback. In the new village, the village chief also called on the villagers to clear the snow. Go to the pig house again, planning to kill a few fat pigs and give the heroes who have returned from a long journey a tooth sacrifice to replenish their bodies. The Li family is also very busy. Not only do I have to help clean the Ye family's yard, but I also need to prepare a lot of food. Tao Hongying's face seemed to be blooming with a smile, and she kept coming in and out. Old Mrs. Li was dizzy when she saw it. From time to time she would say something scolding, and then she would also laugh from ear to ear. The stars and the crescent moon are dressed like fat balls, rolling around in and out of the courtyard. They can only be quiet for a while when they are called to the stove, sit in rows, and eat meatballs in bowls. Every time Jiyan sees them, he can remember when he was a child, lamenting the disadvantages of growing up, and then he would grab a bowl and follow suit. In this way, we have been busy for 3 or 4 days. Everyone thinks that the time is almost up, and they are becoming more and more anxious and looking forward to it. Neither Li Zhensheng nor Li Laoer entered the city. It is rare to rest at home for a few days, and I want to wait for my brother to come back. As a result, at noon that day, everyone was gathering together to have lunch, and suddenly there was a noise outside the courtyard. Everyone thought it was the Northern Expeditionary Army who had returned, so they all threw away their chopsticks and ran out in a swarm. In the end, someone did come back, but it was much unexpected. Lu Yang was being pulled by the village chief and others to talk, and many villagers were watching. Seeing the Li family members rushing over, he grinned, showing his big white teeth. The Li family was stunned for a moment, but they were not disappointed. Mrs. Li quickly asked, "Lu Yang, when did you come back? But you were traveling with Ji, where is Ji?" Lu Yang was reminded and immediately remembered the reason why he ran back like crazy. He rushed Li Laoer and said, "Uncle, something happened to Ji. He was captured by Jing Ziyin's official." "What?" The Li family members were startled and asked in unison, "What's going on?" Lu Yang was hesitant, but Li Zhensheng understood and immediately pulled him into the yard. Everyone quickly followed him back. The village chief was thoughtful enough that when he dispersed the villagers, he didn't forget to call someone to call Mr. Lu and his wife. In the room, Lu Yang had already talked about the causes and consequences. It turned out that they had been wandering around the city for 2 days and found out a lot of things. Although I don't know the specific details, it is absolutely correct that the Wu family bullied Fu Niuer and prompted the family to file a complaint in the palace. Jie Yi was very angry and made up his mind to take revenge. But the Wu family are all in prison, so the escaped young master Wu Yan becomes the only target. It seems that Mr. Wu is also unlucky. The day his home was raided, he happened to be having fun outside. Suddenly he heard that something was going on at home, so he hurriedly hid it. He was not a very smart and decisive person to begin with, so he inquired around secretly, but without any clues. He thought that the queen's sister had made the emperor angry, which caused the family to suffer. So he looked for people everywhere, hoping to ask them to come to the palace to intercede for his family. Consider him lucky. Everyone was concerned about his identity as uncle and were unwilling to help, but they did not take the initiative to report his whereabouts. This actually made young Master Wu think that nothing would happen at home, and there was almost no trace of his whereabouts. Ji Yi and Lu Yang didn't spend much effort at all looking for him. In the morning, Ji Yi deliberately drank some wine, acted like he was drunk, and stood guard near the alley of Wu Das Hao's villa. Then, when young Master Wu went out, Ji Yi pretended to bump into him and started a fight with young Master Wu. Wu Das Hao, who had long been drained of his body by drinking and sex, was no match for Ji Yi. With almost a few kicks, young Master Wu was kicked by Ji Yi until he vomited blood. When passers-by found out, they screamed in surprise to attract visitors, and called for Jing Ziyin's official messenger. Master Wu has lost his breath, and his family's rights have also been taken away by the lock. Lu Yang witnessed the whole process and hurriedly came back to report the news as agreed by the two of them in advance. After saying this, Lu Yang looked at the surprised expressions of the Li family. He was a little worried that the Li family would immediately anger Ji Yi, and quickly added, Ji Yi wants to avenge the princess, but he also has other considerations. End of this chapter.